you're the company now. And, your positive or negative attitude washes over your team in a way that maybe you can't recognize as truly important.
When I was at SpaceX, I remember a very specific moment where I realized I was living in the future. It was at a Halloween party where I was there that the company was throwing. I was there with my family, and I had driven there in my Tesla. I was standing outside a factory that literally turns raw aluminum into rockets, and across the street was the Hyperloop test track that ended up going nowhere, but it was this big, vacuum tube that they had created. And it really hit me in that moment, especially when talking with some other people, that phrase of the future is here, it's just unevenly distributed is really, really true. And it's been kind of the inspiration for my life to try to figure out, okay, how can we make this change? And I know a lot of other people have been in those kinds of environments, and one of them is our guest today. Warren Ernst and I worked together when I was at SpaceX, and since then, throughout his career, he has definitely seen some sights. I would say even more so than I am, than kind of those experiences at SpaceX. He saw those crazy sights watching aluminum turned into rockets at SpaceX. Then he went on to lead training at Karma Automotive, an electric car manufacturer, Heliogen, a company working to develop new methods of capturing solar energy for industrial uses, and Impulse Space, where they're working to dramatically improve space mobility for satellites and spacecraft. He's seen truly this idea that there's all these small companies, niche places, teams that are trying to take the future and make it today. And he's been in learning and development within all of those companies. So today we're really going to be focusing on that conversation of the kinds of experiences that he's seen and bring it into this idea of how manager development plays into the success or lack of success of those companies. Before we get into that discussion, I do want to remind you that if this is your first time listening to the show, please make sure you subscribe so you never miss a future episode. And if you are already subscribed, then ask that you share this show with at least one other person, because that, after all, is how we grow. So with that, let's get into the discussion. Warren, how are you doing today, my friend?
Oh, Matt, great to see you again. As always, doing really well. I couldn't think of you used a metaphor today, which also shows off my career really well. And that was, the Hyperloop road to nowhere. Well, two of those four startups that you mentioned I worked at were themselves delightful roads to nowhere as well. So call me an expert in both L&D, startups, and roads to nowhere.
There you go. Well, I mean, you and I there at the same, several of the companies, I've worked with several companies that have ultimately met that fate. And I do think that's just par for the course, honestly.
Absolutely.
When you choose to go into this world of startups or trying to make the future today, it's just what's going to happen.
Sure.
It's just what's going to go.
I would even argue that the roads to nowhere are in established companies too. They just took 25 years to figure it out instead of 3. So,
yeah.
So yes, but I've been completely fascinated in the human capital equation of startups for the past 15 years, and trying to develop the skills and techniques of new managers, existing managers, the exec team, to make people the force multiplier that startups need. So I've really been looking forward to us having this conversation for some time now.
And I love that you kind of did that brief intro there, because that's, as you said, that's exactly what I want to talk about, because I have this kind of idea that's behind, everything I do with my life right now, behind Better Everyday Studios, is my experiences with these companies has really made me believe that specifically managers are one of the big limiting factors in startups and in companies. And maybe not and these are certainly later stage startups, but I think as a company moves along, first it just has to prove that it can form itself and bring people together. Then it needs to prove that it can build something. Then it needs to prove that that something can have a product market fit. But there's a moment where that happens, right? If they
Right.
make it through kind of those hurdles, they have a product, they have a market, they need to start scaling it. And that's, I think, the key moment where, at least in my experiences, what I've seen is you're promoting people who are, engineers or individual contributors into people management for the first time. You don't give them the skills they need. Thus, attrition raises, productivity lowers. I've been talking with companies where they're struggling with this fact that they've hired a whole bunch of people over the last year and productivity is staying the same, or the amount produced at the end of the day is staying the same, which means productivity is
Yeah.
actually going down
I
on
was going
some
to say, if
worker-worker
they're
basis.
lucky, productivity's staying the same, but yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you've described the point at which where all that initial success, the buildup, that was essentially done by the exec team, the founders, the visionaries.
yeah,
It's when they then decide to then multiply that success out that suddenly, it's not a glamorous word, but middle management is a problem. And the bigger problem is that there's a lot of startups have this egalitarian idea that we should promote from within, that great individual contributors or ICs that we found are going to, you know, obviously be the right choice to lead teams. And sometimes startups, they hire people right from school. They've never even seen a good manager, let
yeah,
alone been represented by, tutored by, led by one. And so a lot of these, when you use the word kids, don't even have a great model on
yeah.
which to, be force multipliers. And now L&D and building up the soft skills of those middle managers becomes even more important than I think founders ever realized.
Yeah. 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 Well, you and I agree with this.
Sure.
I think if you went out and asked whether it's VCs or startup CEOs and founders or even people in those companies, if you had them rank how important are managers on your hierarchy of things, it's probably not in the top 5 or top 10 reasons. I would suspect that they would say this is why my company's not going to work out or this company's not going to work out. in in your experience, um, what are some of the impacts that you've seen in organizations of the way not having those, especially frontline managers, trained well, that
Mm-hmm.
it then ultimately impacts the business?
Well, we already mentioned one, and that's talking about performance and productivity. How,
Yeah.
I sort of said glibly, if you're lucky, your productivity remains constant, but in all likelihood, it drops. And there's the big question as to why. And I kind of think most. Actually, I'm classic. Let me rephrase that. I think a lot of startup creators and leaders are themselves techie and think that technical problems
Mm,
have technical solutions, but the management problem is not a technical solution with a straight path. A
hmm.
lot of technical problems, in a way, remind me of the game Candyland that we used to play as kids. Candyland was so simple. It's, in case you've forgotten, it's one multicolored path on a board.
Yes.
There's no branching. There's no bonuses. You pick a card and it tells you whether you advance one colored square or two. But it's a straight path, and it's just dumb luck
Yeah.
as to when you get to the end. And leadership development is a multi-headed hydra of a monster, which
Yeah.
leads to a lot of problems. The biggest is productivity, but
Yeah.
there's quite a few other ones too, which I'm happy to talk
Just
about, happy to mention. But
yeah, let's stick on productivity for a second because you asked a question of, people wonder why. Like, let's bridge that gap of because I don't think I think you're right. A lot of times when that happens, it's like, oh, we're using the wrong software or the documentation is wrong. Like, I don't necessarily think that you automatically say, oh, the productivity drops. That's the responsibility of the manager. Draw that connection for us.
um, it's a there is not a lot of great metrics for measuring the success or the success or the strengths of a manager. And those that do exist, some of them have a bad rep, and
Yeah.
some of them look ugly. I mean,
Hmm.
employee engagement surveys, they have a bad rap. And I'm not going to say that the panacea to this sort of thing, but if you run an employee engagement survey, you're probably going to find a connection between satisfied employees under managers and the managers of departments that have high performance and high productivity, as well as, by the way, high retention and turnover. Um, in fact, that'll be an inverse proportion that groups that
Yeah.
tend to score low in such things will likely have much higher turnover problems
Yeah.
and retention issues, which people forget is super expensive to
Super
try
expensive.
and resolve. Um,
Yeah.
so the tools to make to make metrics, which might be very easy on the shop floor, might be very easy in programs. They have both a bad rap and they can seem really negative when it deals with the people equation.
Yeah.
But we have, but
And
we have to, but we have to anyway.
yeah, yeah. And you're reminded me of a specific employee engagement survey. Gallup has been doing employee engagement surveys forever. And I think their surveys are an exact reminder that whenever they publish their results, it's an exact reminder of one, exactly what you're talking about, but two, how messy it is and how inconclusive it can feel
Hmm.
because they basically make two leaps, right? It's um, managers are largely responsible for employee engagement, and then employee engagement is largely responsible for productivity. So
Hmm.
those are like there's two leaps there, but it's still, and they're very clear, but it's always like, you know, 48% of the variation in employee engagement can be attributed to the manager.
Hmm.
So which of course is true. What that means is that this is all happening in a context, and you can have a great manager in a horrible company and it's still going to lead to bad engagement, or you can have a great company and a horrible manager and it's going to lead, so it's not 1 + 1 = 2. They're all correlations.
Yeah.
It's not, and there's some causality in there, but it's not a universal truth, which is, I
No,
think, that dirtiness, that messiness that you're talking
I'm gonna even I'm gonna extend the game metaphor a little bit further. It's shoots and ladders, not
about.
Candyland.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Yeah. I
you know.
like that. I like that. So we talked about productivity. I'm sure it sounded like you have some other impacts. What are some of those? I mean, you mentioned, like retention and things. Is that another one?
Well, yeah, and I want to circle back just a little bit towards the employee engagement numbers.
Yeah.
Startups are frequently, tied with venture capital. They're looking for early investments, which means their performance on the street matters maybe a little bit more. And when word gets out that employee engagement numbers are in the tank for a company that is trying to get, investment opportunities, trying to get capital, um, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that low engagement scores will result in
Yep.
lower investment. Lower investment means employees think less of the company. Employees think less of the
Yep. Yep.
company, are less engaged, and now we've got this vicious cycle going on, which a more
Sure. Yep.
established company maybe doesn't worry so much about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe, you know,
Maybe.
you and I should be so lucky to be, living that problem, I guess, right? And that
Yeah.
that that
Yeah.
our company is, well, is figuring
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
investment and that sort of thing. Okay, so there's that. You asked me a question again before I diverge down one of those
Other
shoots or ladders.
impacts.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other impacts beyond productivity.
Right. This is a very unglamorous part of our world, but compliance and risk. Some of
Mm.
the training and learning development we do isn't just building up the skills of our managers, but our mid-level managers, they're in a way the enforcers of
Yes.
policies and things that our people must do. And
Yes.
sometimes you're in a business that's very regulated by government or, military contracts or whatever. And managers who don't demonstrate the importance of handling harassment issues or discrimination issues or safety issues, um, they are putting the company at risk for just
Yeah.
for what? Trying to be cool, not trying to worry about dull, boring, dull, boring stuff.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Or even trying being willing to change with the company, and the new policies. Because I think, kind of, because you can expand that out beyond just compliance training. I've always said, like, the number one way to make your training irrelevant is that after an employee completes the training, they go out on the shop floor and see the opposite happen.
mhm,
So then it's just like, oh, okay. So that training I can actually ignore because that
yeah,
doesn't have anything to do with what we actually do. And yeah, you're right. Managers are the ones that are making that happen.
hmm hmm that ties in with sort of my last big one, and that is culture and morale. That
Yeah.
you know um um I'm not necessarily suggesting that managers need to be cheerleader rah rah, right? But
Yeah.
on the other hand, managers need to have a different mindset. They are no longer in a position to be able to tell their people, well, the company made this dumb decision. The company doesn't care about that. The company this, the company that. It's like, hey, fella, hey, madam, hey, sir, you're the company.
Yes.
It's like, what was that Captain Phillips, movie quote? I'm the captain now. It's like, hey, manager, you're the company now. And, your positive or negative attitude washes over your team in a way that maybe you can't recognize as truly important. You know,
Yeah.
um, Positivity breeds positivity, negativity breeds negativity. Um,
Yeah.
and when you represent the company, I mean, don't be dishonest, don't lie, don't put people in danger, but you need to be taking a look at a number. I was going to not necessarily the big picture, but a number of facets of the picture. I mean, the performance
Yeah.
of your team, the how well they get together, but and work together, but then also where they see their place in the company larger, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even if that means cascading things down, which
Yeah.
is also a manager's job, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things that can be really tough. Because when I was in the military, I always joked that there is no population in the world more cynical than Air Force captains. Like, it's like you've been in the military for a couple years now. That shiny newness has worn off. You're in the slog. You can't get. There's like a 6 year gap before you can get promoted. So you're a captain. It feels like forever, and you're just like, yeah. The cynicism level is just through the roof. And when you're kind of in the trenches with people as an individual contributor, a lot of times that's the way you bond with one another. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
always negative. Sometimes it's just making jokes. Sometimes, like, oh my gosh, we're working late again. But yeah, making that switch to being the people manager, I think you said it perfectly. It's like, to your team, you are the company. Uh, yeah, such an important point.
Yeah, and easily forgotten, especially if you find yourself in the middle and the person you're reporting to has forgotten
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that they're the company to you, just like you're the company to your
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah. Really important. Really
Yeah,
important. So those are some of the impacts. What are some of the common skills you've seen missing when people become managers for the first time?
sure. Okay, there's a few. I think the
Sure.
biggest is giving feedback, both positive and negative. And it might be slightly non-trendy to use the term negative when referring to feedback. I
Yeah.
can see this gray hair in my temples, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
say so, right? Giving positive and negative. And
Yeah.
in the L&D field and the space, we talk about behaviors all the time. That
Yeah.
that we're trying to get people to behave in ways that yield good results and to stop behaving in ways that yield in bad results. And the best way we have to adjust behaviors is positive and negative feedback. And uh, I would also argue that the trick is that um, giving positive feedback requires more work and more eyes open and more head on a swivel so that you have better situational awareness of your team, and it yields better results. but it's a slower path.
Mm,
I mean,
yeah.
it's very easy when giving negative feedback to say, you did X wrong and it caused this problem. Knock it off.
Yeah.
And you might stop that. You might stop that negative problem, but business growth is all about consistent application of positive behaviors that lead to growth, and that
Yep.
means observing positive behaviors that you want to see more of and
Yeah.
calling out, hey, hey, Jimmy, can I give you some feedback? And they say yes or no, and hopefully they say yes. And it's like, when you did X, here's what happened. That was great. Keep it up.
Yeah.
And then you're done. And then doing that on a regular basis, and hopefully way more than negative feedback.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think there's half of me that wants to just completely stop talking about negative feedback. I know we can't because it's really important. But so much of the conversation about feedback always gets consumed with the negative feedback and the
Right.
difficult conversations. I'm right there with you. I find it interesting how so much of the space is like trying to get away from positive. Even negative feedback is positive. Fine. But we all know what we're talking about when we say positive and negative feedback. There's a woman, I don't know if you're familiar with her, named Layla Hermosi. Her and her husband Alex have built a number of big companies. She's the CEO of acquisition.com,
Mm-hmm.
and she has a podcast called Build that is all about this leadership people skill stuff. And she kind of goes so far as to say just give positive feedback. If you reward the things that you want to see enough, the only thing you're going to see is the things you want to see.
Yeah.
Like if and yeah, but I think you gave that is great nuance there. Is that like, yes, that's true, but it does take time. It is
Mm-hmm.
going to take longer, and yeah, that's I think that
When I when
feedback
I
is a great one.
when I give coaching to new managers, or run sessions about it, a lot of times these are in technical companies, technical fields. These people are engineers, and so and I have an engineering background, so I will sometimes fall back to numbers and math. And so I might say things like, "Okay, we're going to start giving, we're going to start for the next month giving feedback." And people are thinking, "Oh boy, I can't wait to tell people, tell these people to knock it off, right?" And it's like, no, 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 no.
Yeah,
In fact,
yeah,
how it's going to start is, for the next 3 weeks, you're going to give nothing but positive feedback. And you're going to let your
yeah,
people know you're giving feedback in a certain way. It's only going to be positive. It's so that I'm used to delivering it, so that you're used to receiving it. And only after like a month do I suggest to managers, okay, now you can give negative feedback, but not before the following. First, you let your people know it's coming.
yeah.
Second, you only give it to your best performers, because number one, the negative feedback you give them is likely to be pretty small. And number
Mm-hmm.
two, they're your best performers. They can take it.
Yeah,
And then number three is the ratio of positive to negative feedback, ideally, is like 3 or 4 to 1, that you have
yeah,
got before you can give that eagerly anticipated negative feedback you've just been dying to give to someone. You've got to come up with 3 or 4 positive feedback elements,
yeah,
and keep that consistent up. And is that more work on you, keeping your head on swivel, keeping your situational awareness high? Of course it is. Oh, you mean this is
yeah,
work? Well, yes, it is, right?
yeah,
Um, so I try to give those rules. I'm not entirely sure I believe that there's no place for negative feedback, but it
yeah,
should be completely overwhelmed, in my opinion, by positive feedback. And there's ways to do it. And, if your team is, engineers and math based, use that.
yeah, yeah.
That's doable.
Exactly. Yeah. So what you mentioned there were a few. So feedback, that's a major skill gap.
Right.
Behavior
Uh,
gap. What are some of the other ones that
right.
pop into your head?
How to delegate work. And I don't mean how to
Mm-hmm.
assign work. I mean, telling someone to do something that's part of their responsibility. I mean, that's a thing, but that's not the second most important thing, in my opinion. It's how to delegate work. And that is how to assign an individual contributor who reports to you one of your tasks, freeing you up to do something bigger and also building up their skill set.
Yeah.
And my philosophy there is, a task that's pretty small for you is pretty big for someone who reports to you. And
Yeah.
so if you can find a task that is small for you, big for them, and if they accidentally don't do it great the first couple of times, no big deal. It's like
Hmm.
giving someone a rubber ball instead of a glass Christmas ornament, that if they
Hmm.
accidentally drop the rubber ball, it'll bounce, pick it up,
Yeah.
no big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus, the family heirloom glass Christmas ornament, which, you drop it and oh boy, that's it. There's gonna be hell
Yeah.
to pay.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, this is what gives managers more opportunity to grow and do, and to learn more that might allow them to grow in the hierarchy of an organization, as well as your people.
Yeah.
And at a certain, and the question may be asked, and team leaders need to ask this. Okay, great. I've delegated one of my things to one of my ICs. My IC was working at full capacity. Well, what about the thing that my IC was now doing they no longer have time for? Well, for the joke that it's turtles all the way down, in some cases, it could be delegation much of the way down too, in which what was a small task for the person you're giving this responsibility to is a big task for someone underneath them. Well, that's how they grow. And
Hmm.
you can't keep delegating things, turtles all the way down. But at a certain point, you might ask the question, does this thing really still need to be done?
I think that's the key question right there. Yeah.
You know, and then
Yeah. I
deciding,
think,
no, maybe it doesn't. Or maybe an
yeah.
AI does it. Or
Yeah.
or maybe there's a tool that does it.
Ultimately, I mean, we're all familiar with the 80-20 rule, this idea that, 20% of the stuff gets 80% of the results.
Mm-hmm.
And I think ultimately a company is just a constant evolution of that, of finding the things that matter and doing more of it, and the
Mm-hmm.
things that don't matter and doing less of it. And the companies that get stagnant never get rid of tasks or never get rid of responsibilities. And another Layla Hermosi quote is a big part of being a leader is deciding which fires to let burn.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's on you yeah, and I think you're right. That's the thing that people forget is they delegate stuff and then they never leave space for their direct report to come to them and say, okay, boss, I'm on it, but I have this full list over here. What don't you want me to do?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's situations where the answer is figure it out, and that's kind of the delegation. But more than likely, more of the time, it's like this thing over here, let's not do that this month and see what happens,
Yeah.
see if it matters at all.
Or talk to some internal customers and say, look, I do these 4 things for you. We're going to drop one of them, maybe one and a half of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there one of these tasks we're doing for you that, in all honesty, we've been doing it for you and you've been saying thank you, but it's not really affecting you that much?
I shudder to think how many instances throughout the corporate world are there of one team like compiling a report every month and forwarding it to some other team.
Mm-hmm.
Unbeknownst to them, that report just gets shuffled into a file and never looked at.
Yeah.
Like the equivalent of that is probably everywhere
Yes.
in corporate America.
Yeah.
And it's just about asking. Yeah. Asking. I
Right.
think that's a great tip. Go out and ask your customers, whoever your customer, whether that's internal, external, whatever it is.
You may get
Leave.
thanked. You may get thanked for
Yeah.
like, oh, thank God, I've been dealing with this thing for 2 years now, and I feel guilty every time I
Yes.
I
Yeah.
file
You've
it.
been sent it to me. I don't know what to do with this email. So I just keep worrying that something's going to happen. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground already, and I want to be conscious of time. There
Sure.
have been a few great nuggets in here of things that people can go do. Here's a skill gap. Here's a way to close it. If you had another, whether it's a fix or a skill, whether that's a company looking to implement something or a manager looking to do for themselves, like what's one more like thing or fix that you've seen work to help improve managers?
Okay. This work. This is going to sound very nuts and boltsy and not very sexy, glamorousy, or any other
I
words
like it
ending
already.
in E. Okay. And it applies to exec level all the way down. And
Okay.
that is, in my opinion, how we do meetings, how we handle meetings, how we accept people being late to meetings, how we accept not having agendas for meetings, how we accept not making decisions for meetings or assigning responsibility for meetings, how we accept not ending meetings on time. And I think the main reason we do it is because our members of our exec team might, they lead busy days, have busy lives. They're scheduled every minute of their day. And so some meetings run late. And then that forces all the ICs that they have to run late. And you wind up having meetings that don't do what they're supposed to do. And that is quickly present some information, um, attempt to make a decision based on those informations, assign tasks based on those decisions, and get confirmation that those tasks will be done. And it can be very uncomfortable when you're in the middle of the management chain and you have a meeting with 20 people and the CEO and CFO are supposed to be there and it's 5 minutes in and they're not there. And what do you do? And it takes courage and some culture change for a manager in the middle to say, you know what? It's 1 minute past the hour. We're starting.
Yeah.
We're starting.
I like that.
And when there's 10 minutes to go, it's like, guys, we have 10 minutes to go. People need to leave in 9. We need to make a decision right now.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard this expression, I'm sure, that work expands to accommodate all the time allotted to it.
Yep.
And I kind of feel like meetings are the same way, that if there's an hour-long meeting, we know people will start late, that there's a lot of kibitzing and talking about things that might not necessarily be important or that help make a decision or assign an instruction. And then as there's 3 or 4 minutes to go, you're like, oh my God, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to do that. And in the last 3 or 4 minutes, you assign some responsibilities, you make a quick decision. I think it bears asking the question, if you did all that in the last 10 minutes of an hour-long meeting, did that meeting really have to be an hour, or could it have been 10 minutes?
Yeah.
I think the answer is it could have been 10 minutes, a lot more. This is a big culture change. It's not just following instructions to have meetings, but it's also having a culture change such that when middle managers start meetings on time when the CEO is late, that there's not going to be an uncomfortable conversation later in the day with the CEO and that and that leader of the meeting who said, hey, you started without me. It's like, well, madam, sir, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
And we agreed in theory that we should operate this way for a variety of reasons. And now the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I love, meeting discipline. I was not expecting that, but it absolutely makes sense. It's been proven out, Amazon proves it out. Amazon they're zealots about meeting structure and how they do things. As you were talking, it did remind me of, though I'm 100% on board with you of, most hour-long meetings could have been 30-minute meetings, et cetera. I remember thinking that in previous companies that people needed to get certified to schedule 30-minute meetings because the thing about a 30-minute meeting is it needs to be structured.
It's got to move.
You can do amazing things in a 30-minute meeting if you start on time, you have an agenda, you target that agenda, and you can do it, but you have to you got to get going.
You've got to get on it, and you might need a hand.
Yeah.
I mean, one strategy sometimes I recommend is, especially if you have a team that is growing, that you assign some meeting responsibilities to one of your ICs. Have them take notes. Have them take the follow-ups. Have them, meet the match the agenda. I have one really dumb change that succeeded bigly at one company. We were starting meetings late, ending them late. We were not maintaining an agenda, and there wasn't a single meeting room in the entire building that had a clock. How can you possibly be expected to keep track of time if you don't have a clock?
I like it.
In the room. That was an easy fix. That was an easy fix.
Yeah.
And actually, the fix was not just clocks, but ones that automatically adjusted for daylight savings and kept on time, because they would drift.
That's important.
It was. But if you care about time, measure time. Really, if you care about anything you want to measure, have the equipment capable of measuring it. And time is a thing.
I swear these are getting really high tech. I'm pretty sure I've been at a company once where it was like when there was 5 minutes left on the scheduled meeting, like the lights would flash or something.
Oh, I love that idea.
It was great. And I actually believe in that one. Yeah, I think the lights automatically turned off at the end of the meeting.
Mhm.
So you can, but you don't have to go that crazy.
Yeah.
I love that. This has been really great, Warren. I think so. The things that I got out of the conversation obviously are, one. So we were coming into this in agreement that like managers were really important. I think you gave some really interesting nuances on some of the ideas around feedback, around delegation, and I wouldn't have expected the idea of just like no, like if you can, it's almost the idea of meeting discipline almost to me sounds like the old adage of like making your bed. If you're
Yeah.
if you're trying to figure out your life, you don't know what to do, make your bed. Just that's the first step in like personal discipline. I
That's a
feel like
military
meeting
man's
discipline.
that's military man talking
Yeah,
right there. Yeah, I can tell.
yeah, exactly. And I feel like meeting discipline is kind of the corporate equivalent of that. So that's been fantastic. Yeah, are you still doing any like where what other updates are there for you? Anything else that people should be watching out for you? How can people reach out to you?
Well, let's see. So I do have well, my name is Warren Ernst, and I am not the district attorney of Houston, which also shares the name Warren Ernst. So let's just keep that in
That's
mind.
funny.
Um, but but I do own warrenernst.com, which I'm sure is a real problem to his political career. But
Yes,
hey, like, I was there
you
first.
got it first.
I got it first, and so you can find uh, my learning and development consultancy, business details. You can find an active resume. I presented recently at ATD about using crowdsourcing technologies to measure the ROI of soft skills, things like leadership development and management training. And so the contents for that presentation, including the deck and the spreadsheets and the math behind the spreadsheets, they're all available for download there. So
Awesome.
that's sort of the big one. I am wrapping up building up a learning and development team at a small aerospace company in Southern California. I'm coming off that job in the next few weeks, and so I am interested in finding the next big thing.
Looking for the next
So
adventure.
exactly. So
Excellent.
that would be a good place to start. Is warrenernst.com.
Perfect. Well, especially for any talent development professionals listening, I highly recommend you go check out that content on ROI calculation. I was amazed, but I was really, really intrigued by it. It sent me down some rabbit holes, and I highly recommend you check it out.
Oh, thanks.
Other than that, thank you so much, Warren. Thanks everybody for listening. I know we'll be talking a lot more in the future, so have a great rest of your day.
I hope we do. I hope you have a great day too. And we can even talk off camera too, because you know what, you're a reasonably nice guy. We've over all these decades, it's like, yeah, you've proven to be a decent fellow.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Well, have a great day.
Well, thanks, Matt. You too.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you are looking for help turning your organization's great engineers into great managers, me and my team at Better Everyday Studios would love to help. We deliver targeted and interactive training workshops that are designed to help build the 3 fundamental skills of any new manager: building trust, giving feedback, and setting goals. Reach out to me through matt@bettereverydaystudios.com so we can start making your organization better every day.